On November 14th, 1998, the members of the Tectonic Theatre Project traveled to Laramie, Wyoming to conduct interviews with the members of the town. Now, during the next year, we would return to Laramie several times and conduct over 200 interviews. The play you are about to see is from those interviews, as well as other journal entries made by members of the company and other found text. Company member Greg Pierotti.
The first interview I had was with Detective Sergeant Hinge of the Laramie Police Department.
I was born and raised here. My family is a third generation. My grandparents moved here back in the 1900s. We've had basically three. Well, my daughter makes it fourth generation. Quite a while. It's a good place to live. Good people. Lots of space. Now, all the towns in southern Wyoming are laid out and spaced apart, so the railroad came through. It was the only way they could come to refuel and rewater. And Laramie was a major stopping point. That's why the towns are spaced so far apart. We're one of the largest states in the country, and the least populated.
There's so much space between people and towns here. So much time for reflection. You have the opportunity to be happy in your life here. I find here that the people are nicer than in the Midwest where I used to teach. Because they are happy. They are glad the sun is shining, and it shines a lot here.
What you have your old-time, traditional-type ranchers. They've been here forever. Laramie's kind of been the hub where they get their supplies and stuff like that.
Stewardship is one of the first things our ancestors taught us. If you don't take care of the land, you ruin it and you lose your living. So one of the first things you have to do is take care of the land and find better ways to improve it.
Oh, I love it here. You couldn't put me back in that mess out back east. The best thing about it is the climate. The cold and the wind. They say a Wyoming wind will drive a man insane, but I tell you what, it don't bother me. Well, some of the times it bothers me, but most of the times it don't bother me much.
And then you have your university population.
I moved here after living in a couple of big cities. I loved it there, but you'd have to be out of your mind to let your kids out after dark. But here, in the summertime, my kids play out till 11 o'clock at night, and I don't think twice about it.
And then you have the people that actually live in Laramie. Basically.
I moved here from rural Texas. Now, in Laramie, if you don't know a person, you will definitely know someone they know. So it can only be like 1 degree removed at most. And for me, I love it. I mean, I love to go to the grocery store because I get to visit with 4 or 5 or 6 people every time I go. And I don't really mind people know my business because what's my business? I mean, my business is basically good.
I like the trains too. Oh, they don't bother me. Well, some of the times they bother me, but most of the times they don't bother me much, even though one comes by my house every 13 minutes out where I live.
Doc actually lives up in Bossler, but everybody in Laramie knows him. He's also not really a doctor.
They used to carry cattle, them trains. Now all they carry is diapers and cars. And
I grew up in Cody, Wyoming. Laramie's better than where I grew up, I'll give it that.
It's a good place to live. Good people. Lots of space. Now, when the incident happened with that boy, a lot of press people started showing up. And one time, a couple of them came out with me on the scene. And it was a beautiful day. Absolutely gorgeous day. You know, real clear and crisp, and the sky. It was that blue. You can't really paint it, but it's just sky blue. And the mountains with a little snow on them. And this reporter, a lady, she was there. And she said,
"Well, who found the boy? Who was out here anyway?"
And I said, well, this is a really popular area for running. Mountain biking's really popular. Horseback riding. You know, it's close to town. And she looked at me and said,
"Who in the hell would want to run out here?"
And I'm thinking, lady, you're just missing the point. All you gotta do is turn around, look at the mountains, smell the air, listen to the birds, just look at what's around you. And they were nothing but the story. I didn't feel judged. I just felt they were stupid. They're just missing the point. They're just missing the whole point.
It's hard to talk about Laramie now. You know, to tell you what Laramie is for us. If you'd have asked me before, I would have told you Laramie is a beautiful town. You know, a town secluded enough you can have your own identity. A town with a strong sense of community. A town with a personality that most larger cities are stripped of. Now, after Matthew, we've become a town defined by an accident, a crime. We've become Waco, we've become Jasper. We've become a definition, a noun, a sign. We may be able to get rid of that, but sure will take a while.
Moisés called saying he had an idea for his next theater project, but there was a somberness to his voice.
So I asked him what it was all about, and he told me he wanted to do a piece about what's happening in Wyoming.
Lee told me the company was thinking of heading to Laramie and conducting some interviews and asked me if I wanted to come.
I'm hesitant. I have no real interest into prying into a town's unraveling.
I've never done anything like this in my life. How do you get people to talk to you? What do you ask?
The company has agreed that we should go to Laramie for a week and interview people.
I'm a bit afraid about taking people on a trip of this nature. Must make some safety rules. No one works alone. Everyone carries cell phones. Have made some preliminary contacts with Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming. She is hosting a party for us our first night in Laramie, and has promised to introduce us to possible interviewees.
We've had so much negative closure on this whole thing, and the students really need to talk. When this first happened, they started talking, and then the media descended, and all the dialogue stopped. You know, I really love my students because they are free thinkers, and you may not like what they have to say, or you may not like their opinions because they can be very redneck, but they're honest, and they're truthful. So there's an excitement here. I have a dynamic here with my students that I never had in the Midwest or in North Dakota, because there was so much Puritanism that dictated the way that people looked at the world. And most of the time they didn't even have an opinion or couldn't express an opinion. And quite honestly, I'd rather have opinions I don't like and have that dynamic in education. There's a student I think you should talk to. His name is Jedediah Schultz.
I've lived in Wyoming my whole life. You know, the family's been here, well, for generations. when it came time to go to college, I knew that my parents couldn't afford to send me. And I knew that I wanted to study theater. So if I was going to go, I knew I was going to have to get a scholarship. So they have this competition each year, this Wyoming State High School competition. So I went to the theater department at university looking for a good scene. And I told one of the professors, I was like, I need a good scene. And he was like, here you go. This is it. And it was from Angels in America. So I read it. And I knew that I could win Best Scene if I did a good enough job. So when the time came, I told my parents so they could come see me in the competition. Now you have to understand, my parents go to everything. Every ball game, every hockey game, everything I've ever done. So they called me into their room and told me that if I did that scene, that they wouldn't come see me in the competition because they felt that it was wrong. They felt that homosexuality was wrong. They felt that strongly about it, that they didn't want to come see their son do probably the most important thing he'd done in his life up to that point. And I didn't know what to do. I'd never gone against my parents' wishes. So I was kind of worried about it. But I decided to do it. And all I can remember from the competition is that when it was over, me and my scene partner, we shook hands and there was a standing ovation. Oh my God, it was amazing. We took first place and we won. And that's how come I can afford to be here at the university. Because of that scene. It was one of the best moments of my life. And my parents weren't there. To this day, that is the one thing they didn't see me do. And looking back on it, I asked myself, why did I do it? Why did I go against my parents' wishes? Because I'm not gay. So why did I do it? And I guess the only honest answer that I can come up with is I wanted to win. It was such a good scene. It was like the best scene. Do you know Mr. Kushner? Maybe you can tell him.
We arrived today in the Denver airport and drove to Laramie. The moment we crossed the Wyoming border, I swear I saw a herd of buffalo. Also, I thought it was strange that the Wyoming sign said,
Wyoming, like no place on earth.
Instead of Wyoming, like no place else on earth.
I stopped at a local inn for a bite to eat, and my waitress said to me,
Hi, my name is Debbie. I was born in 1954, and yes, Debbie Reynolds was big back then. So there's a lot of us around, but don't you worry, I won't slap you if you leave your elbows on the table.
Today, the company tried to explain to me to no avail what chicken fried steak was.
Are you from Wyoming, or are you just passing through?
We're just passing through.
We arrived in Laramie tonight, just past the Welcome to Laramie sign, population 26,687. The first thing to greet us was Walmart. In the dark, we could be on any main drag in America. Fast food chains, gas stations. But as we drove into the downtown area by the railroad tracks, the building still looked like a turn-of-the-century western town. Oh, and as we passed the University Inn, on the sign where amenities such as heated pool or cable TV are usually touted, it said, "Hate is not a Laramie value."
I met today with two longtime Laramie residents, Allison Mears and Marge Murray. Two social service workers who taught me a thing or two.
Well, what Laramie was like back when Marge was growing up.
Well, it was mostly rural. Yeah, it was. I enjoyed it. My kids all had horses.
Well, there was more land. You could keep your pet horse, your cow, your little chickens. You know, just have your nice little bit of acreage.
Yeah, I could run around the house in my all-togethers, do the housework while the kids were in school, and nobody could see me. And if they got that close...
Well, then that's their problem.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I got the expression right. In your all-togethers?
Well, yeah, honey, while we're clothes.
Now, how's he gonna use that in his play?
So this was a big ranching town.
Oh, no, not just ranching. This was a big railroad town at one time. You know, before they moved everything to Cheyenne and Green River and Omaha. Well, now it's more of just a drive-through spot for the railroad. But let me tell you, Wyoming is real bad in terms of jobs. I mean, the university has the big high whoop-de-doo jobs, but bulk of the people in Wyoming are working minimum wage jobs.
Yeah, I've either been in the service industry or bartending most of my life. And now I know everybody in town.
And she does.
And I do. See, here in Laramie, there's a difference, and there always has been. And what it is a class distinction. It's between the well-educated and the ones that are not. And the educated don't understand why the ones that are not don't get educated. Never mind, I was the best damn bartender in town.
And she was!
That's not bragging, that's a fact.
Well, in Laramie, if it weren't for the university, well, we'd just be SOL.
What's SOL?
Well, do I have to say it? Well, it's shit out of luck! Wardy, you've got that on your tape. Boy, are you getting an education today?
I guess I am. So let me just ask you, what was your reaction when this happened to Matthew Shepard?
Well, I've been close enough to the case to know many of the people. I have a daughter that's on the sheriff's department. As for the gay issue, I don't give a damn one way or the other as long as they don't bother me. And that's the attitude of most of the Laramie population. They might poke one if they were in a bar situation, you know. They've been drinking, then actually smack one in the mouth. But then they just walk away. Most of them, they would just say, I don't swing that way, and whistle on about their business. Laramie is live and let live.
Now, I'd like to think that Marge knows a lot more except she's even willing to say, and I think we have to respect her for that.
Well, where are you going with this story?
Oh, well, we haven't decided. When we finish, we're gonna try and bring this to Laramie.
Well, yeah. Then there are parts I won't tell you.
Today, for the first time, we met someone who actually knew Matthew Shepard. Trish Steger, owner of a shop in town. Trish referred to him as Matt.
Matt used to come into my shop. That's how I knew him.
It was the first time I heard him referred to as Matt instead of Matthew. Did he go by Matt to everyone?
Well, on the 2nd of October, I got a call about 10 after 7, and it was Matthew Shepard, and he said to me, "Can you pick me up on the corner of 3rd and Grand?" So anyhow, I come up to the corner to see Matthew Shepard, you know, and it's a little guy, but almost maybe 5'2", soaking wet. I bet you 97 pounds tops. Oh, and they said that he was 110 in the paper, but I wouldn't believe it. And then they said he was 5'5" in the newspaper. This man was no more than 5'2", maybe 5'1". So anyway, he comes up to the window. And, you know, I'm going to try to go in steps so you could better get the principle of this man. So he comes up to the window, and I say, "Are you Matthew Shepard?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm Matthew Shepard, but I don't want you to call me Matthew or Mr. Shepard. Okay, I don't want you to call me anything. My name is Matt, and I want you to know that I'm a gay man, and we're going to a gay bar. Do you have a problem with that?" And I said, "Well, how are you paying?" Okay, the fact is, Laramie doesn't have any gay bars, and for that matter, neither does Wyoming. So he was hiring me to take him all the way down to Fort Collins, Colorado, which is almost an hour away. Oh, Matt was a blunt little shit. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he always was. But you know, I liked him because he was straightforward. You know what I mean? Maybe gay, but straightforward. You know what I'm saying.
I don't know, you know? How does any one person ever tell about another? You really should talk to my sister, Romaine. She was a very close friend of Matthew's.
We never called him Matthew, actually. Most of the time we called him Choo-Choo. We used to call him Matt Chew, and then we just started calling him Choo-Choo. And whenever I think of Matthew, I always think of his incredible beaming smile. I mean, he'd walk in and be like, you know? And he smiled at everyone. He just made you feel great. And he would like stare people down in the coffee shop because he always wanted to sit on the end seat so that he could talk to me while I was working. And if somebody was sitting in that seat, he would just sit there and stare at them until they left. And then he would claim his spot. But Matthew definitely had a political side to him. I mean, he really wanted to get into political affairs. That was all his big interest was watching CNN and MSNBC. I mean, those were the only TV stations I ever saw his TV turned into. Yeah, Matthew was really smart with the political affairs. But not too smart when it came to the common sense things. So he moves to Laramie to go to school.
Matthew was very shy when he first came in, almost to the point of being somewhat mousy, I'd almost say. He was having some difficulties adjusting, but this was home for him, and he made that quite clear. So this mousiness, this shyness, gave way to a person that was excited about this track he was going to embark on. I mean, he was just figuring out human rights and how he was going to do that. And so when that happens, this person begins to bloom a little. You know, he was saying, there are opportunities for me here. There are things that I can do in this world. I can be important.
I heard from Matthew about 48 hours before his attack. He told me that he had joined the gay and lesbian group on campus and that he was really enjoying it. You know, he was getting ready for Pride Week and whatnot. I mean, he was really stoked about school. Yeah, he was really happy about being there.
And in retrospect, and I can only say this in retrospect, of course, I think that's where he was heading, to human rights, which only adds to the irony and tragedy of all of this.
Let me tell you something else here. There is more gay people in Wyoming than meets the eye. I know for a fact. They're not particularly the queens. You know what I mean. The runaround queen gay people. You know, the runaround faggot type people. No. These are the ones that throw bale and hay and jump on horses and brand them. You know. Like I always say, never fuck with a Wyoming queer because they will kick you in your fucking ass. You know, all right, but that's not the point I was trying to say here. Because I know a lot of gay people. I know a lot of people, period. I lived up here some years, you know what I'm saying? And I don't think Wyoming people give a damn one way or the other if you're gay or straight. That's just what I said. It don't matter. Now, if there are 8 men and 1 woman in a Wyoming bar, which is often the case, you got to stop and think. Now, who's getting what? You know what I'm saying? It don't take a big, intelligent man to figure that one out.
My understanding when I first got here is I was the first out lesbian or gay faculty member on campus, and that was in 1992, so that wasn't that long ago. They asked me in my interview what my husband did for a living, and so I just came out then. Do you want to know a funny story? So when you first get here as a new faculty member, there's all these things you have to do. And so I was in my office, and I noticed this woman called me. And, I was assuming it was a health insurance phone call, something like that. And so I called her back, and I could hear her. She's on her keyboard, clicking away. And I go, "Hi, this is Kathy Connolly returning your phone call." And she goes, "Oh, it's you." And I thought, this is bizarre. And she goes, I hear you're gay." And I said, "Uh-huh." And she goes, "I'm one too." And she wanted to come over and meet me immediately. And she later told me that there were other lesbians she knew who didn't want to be seen with me. That I would irreparably taint them, and that just to be seen with me would be a problem.
When I came here, I knew it was going to be hard as a gay man. But I kept telling myself, people should live where they want to live. And, I would go down to Denver and I would go out to these gay bars and people would ask me, "Where are you from?" And I'd say, "Laramie, Wyoming." And I met so many men down there, so many gay men who grew up here. And they tell me, "Oh, how can you live there? I had to get out, grr. But every once in a while, there'd be a guy. "Oh gosh, I miss Laramie. I really love it there. That's where I want to live." And they get this starry-eyed look. And I'm like, if that's where you want to live, then do it. I mean, imagine if more gay people stayed in small towns. But it's easier said than done, of course.
Today we are moving from a motel and heading for the Best Western. My hope is that it is a better Western.
Today we divided up to go to different churches in the community. Moisés and I were given a Baptist church. And we were welcomed by the Reverend himself, standing at the entrance to the chapel. This is what I remember from his sermon that morning.
My dear brothers and sisters, I am here today to bring you the word of the Lord. Now I have a truth that I tell to my colleagues, and I'm going to tell it to you today. The word is either sufficient or it is not. Now scientists tell me that human history, that the world is 5 billion or 6 billion years old. After all, what's a billion years, give or take? The Bible tells me that human history is 6,000 years old. The word is either sufficient or it is not.
Sociology, religion in the West. Dominant religious tradition in this town. Baptists, Mormons, they're everywhere. They're not just in Salt Lake, they're all over. They're like jam on toast down here.
The Mormon church has a little different thing going that irritates some folks. And that is that we absolutely believe that God still speaks to man. We don't believe that it happened and that some folks wrote it in the Bible. We believe that God still speaks to man today. The prophet of the church has the authority to receive inspiration and revelation from God.
So the spectrum would be on the left side of the panel. So far left that I'm probably sitting by myself. Me and the Unitarian Church. Unitarians are by and large humanists, many of whom are atheists. I mean, we're not even sure we're a religion. And to my right on the spectrum, to his credit, Father Rogers, Catholic priest who's well established here, and God bless him. He did not equivocate at all when this happened. He hosted the vigil for Matthew that night.
Well, I was really jolted because, when we did the vigil, we wanted to get other ministers involved, and we called some of them, and they were not going to get involved. And it was like, we're going to stand back and wait to see which way the wind is blowing. And that angered me immensely. We're supposed to stand out as leaders. I thought, wow, what's going on here?
God has set boundaries, and it is our responsibility to learn. But what is it that God wants us to learn? You read your scripture, you listen to your leaders, and then you get an idea of what is in bounds. And then once you kind of feel what's in bounds, you get an idea for what is out of bounds. A proclamation came out on the family, and that is that a family consists of a man, a woman, and their children. That is it. That is a family. That's about as clear as you can state it. There is no sexual deviation in the Mormon Church. No leniency. We just think it is out of bounds.
I warn you, you will be mocked. You will be ridiculed for the singularity of your faith. But you let the Bible be your guide. It's in there. It's all in there.
Christian pastors, many of the conservative ones, were silent on this. Conservative Christian likes to use the Bible to show the rest of the world, it says here in the Bible, and most Americans believe, and they do, that the Bible is the Word of God, and how are you gonna fight that?
I am a biblicist, which means the Bible doesn't need me to be true. The Bible is true, whether I believe in it or not. The Word is either sufficient or it is not.
I arrived in Laramie on September 15th. I looked around, cement factories, tumbleweed, and said, what the hell am I doing in Wyoming? 3 weeks later, I found out what the hell I was doing in Wyoming.
I had breakfast this morning with a university student named Zubaida Ullah. She's an Islamic feminist who likes to do things her own way.
I've lived in Laramie since I was 4. Yeah. My parents are from Bangladesh. 2 years ago, because I'm Muslim, I decided to start wearing a headscarf. That's really changed my life in Laramie. Yeah. Like, people say things to me like, why do you have to wear that thing on your head? Like, when I go to the grocery store, I'm not looking to give people Islam 101. You know what I mean? So, I'll be like, well, it's part of my religion. And they'll be, and this is the worst part, because they'll be like, oh, I know it's part of your religion, but why? And it's, how am I supposed to go into the whole doctrine of physical modesty and my own personal spiritual relationship with the Lord standing there with my pop and chips? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, hello. My name is Amanda Gronich, and I am in Laramie working with a theater company. I was at the Reverend's, your husband's church on Sunday, and I was extremely interested in speaking with the Reverend about some of his thoughts about recent events.
I don't think he'll want to talk to you. He has very biblical views about homosexuality. He doesn't condone that kind of violence, but he doesn't condone that kind of lifestyle. You know what I mean? And he was just bombarded with press after this happened, and the media's just been terrible about this whole thing.
Oh, yes, I really understand. It must have just been terrible.
I think we're all hoping this just goes away.
Well, do you think I could call back and speak with the Reverend? Even just for a moment.
Well, all right, you can call him back tonight at 9 o'clock.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll do that.
Today, Barbara and I went to the Fireside Bar, which is the last place Matthew was seen in public.
The Fireside. Definitely feels like a college bar with a couple of pool tables and a stage area for karaoke night. Still, the few regulars in the late afternoon were hardly the college crowd.
first person we talked to was Matt Mickelson, the owner.
My great-great-grandfather moved here in 1862. And in 1870, Louisa Grandma Swain cast the first women's ballot in any free election in the world. And that's why Wyoming is the equality state.
So what about the night Matthew Shepard was here?
Yeah, we had karaoke that night. 20, 30 people. Matthew Shepard came in. Just hanging out. You know, if you want to talk to someone, you should talk to Matt Galloway. He's the kid that was bartending that night. You have to meet him. His character speaks for itself. Hey, is Galloway bartending tonight?
Okay, so I'm gonna make this brief, quick, but it's gonna be everything, just the facts. Factual. So I come in Tuesday night, usual time, 10 o'clock. Matthew Shepard, he strolls in, takes a seat at the bar, orders a Heineken.
Matt likes to drink Heineken and nothing else. Heineken, even though you have to pay $9.50 for a six-pack, he'd always buy the same beer.
What do you want to know about Matt? Well, if you had 100 customers just like him, it'd be the most perfect bar I'd ever seen, okay? And that's got nothing to do with sexual orientation either. I'm talking about, absolute mannerisms, manners, politeness, intelligence, that sort of thing. Taking care of me, as in tips, dress nice, clean cut. Some people just sit down at the bar, they offer, thank you, please, sort of thing, and, offer intellect within their vocabulary. So yeah, he sat there at the bar, kind of just didn't look like he was waiting for anyone, kind of just, sip his beer, enjoy the company around. Now, about 11:30, 11:30, Henderson and McKinney, they stroll in. Now, I didn't know their names at the time, but these guys, they're the accused, they're the perps, they're the accused. They walk in, very stone-faced, dirty, grungy, rude, walk up to the bar, give me this, give me that sort of thing. And, as you know, pay for the pitcher of beer with dimes and quarters. I mean, that's just something you don't forget. I mean, 5, 15 dimes and quarters, it's a freaking nightmare. But anyway, I will give them, they didn't look intoxicated at all when they came in. I mean, they ordered the beer and took the pitcher and went into the back in the bar area, in the pool area, and kind of just kept to themselves. Until about half an hour later, I see them, they're roaming around the bar. No beer. I remember thinking to myself, I'm not going to go and ask them if they want anything else because they just paid for the beer in dimes and quarters. Got a pretty good feeling they don't got any more money.
Money meant nothing to Matthew because he came from a lot of it. I mean, he would hand over his wallet in like 2 seconds because money meant nothing. His shoes might have meant something. They can say it was robbery, but I don't believe it for even an iota of a second.
I look up, and about 20 seconds later, these guys made it over to Matthew Shepard. They're talking to Matthew Shepard. Aaron and Russell, that is.
Aaron said that a guy walked up to him and said that he was gay and wanted to get with Aaron and Russ. And he got aggravated with it and told him he was straight, didn't want anything to do with him, and walked off. He said that is when he and Russell went to the bathroom and decided to pretend to be gay and get him in the truck and rob him.
Okay, no. Alright? They say that Matt approached them? No, I completely disbelieve and refute the statement completely. Refute it, and I'm going to give you 2 reasons why. 1, character reference. Why would he approach them? Why them? They say that Matt was going up and approaching everybody in the bar. Bullshit! They say he was just flaming gay, he was just homosexual. I mean, that he was coming up to everybody. He didn't approach me. I mean, hello? I don't believe it for a second. And 2, territorialism. And that's the fact that Aaron and Russell, they were in the pool area, like I said, in the back. And Matt's area was in the front, here. And by the time they had talked, they'd made it into Matt's area. So, who approached who by that? I mean...
But Matthew was the kind of person, he would never not talk to somebody for any reason. If someone started talking to him, he'd be like, oh, blah, 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 blah. He never had any problem striking up a conversation with anybody.
Matt did feel lonely a lot. Me knowing that, and knowing how gullible Matt could be, he would have walked right into it. The fact that he was at the bar alone without any friends made him that much more vulnerable.
So, I mean, and the only thing is, and this is pretty much what I'm testifying to, because, as you know, I'm pretty much the key eyewitness in the case. So, And what I'm testifying to is that I saw Matthew leave, and I saw him leave with 2 guys. Now, I didn't see their faces, but I saw the back of their heads, and at the same time, Russell and Aaron, they were no longer around. You do math.
Actually, I think the DJ was the last one to see him. Gave him a cigarette or something. His name's Shadow.
Yeah, I was actually the last person that Matt talked to before he left the fireside that night. I was just bullshitting around with my shit, you know, when he stopped me. I stopped him, actually, and he's like, hey, Shadow, da-da-da-da. I was like, what, man, getting ready to leave? He's like, yeah, man, and this and that. But then I noticed them 2 guys. And then they stood outside. You seen it, you know, you could see it. They were standing there, and they were looking at him, and he was looking back at them. And I stood and I talked to Matt for a good 10 minutes. And you seen the guys he was with, you seen him like getting like worried, like anxious to leave and shit. So when they took off, I seen it when they took off. It was in a black truck. It was a small truck, and the 3 of them sat in the front seat, and Matt sat in the middle. But yeah, I didn't think anything of it, you know. I didn't figure them guys was gonna be like that.
Oh, I've known Aaron a long time. Aaron was a good kid. I liked Aaron a lot, which is why I was shocked when I heard this. I knew he was living out far at his trailer house is what he told me, with his girl. They had just started dating last summer. They must have gotten pregnant as soon as they started dating because, you know, they had a kid. He was only 21 years old, but he was running around with a kid. You see, that's the kind of person Aaron was. Just like, he always dressed in like big clothes, you know, Tommy Hilfiger, Polo, Gucci. At the time I knew him, he was just a young kid trying to, you know, fit in, you know, like acting tough, acting cool. But you could get in his face about it, and he would back down like he was some kind of scared kid.
Russell was just so sweet. I mean, he was the one that was the Eagle Scout. His whole personality was just quiet and sweet. And so, of course, it doesn't make sense to me. And I know people like snap or whatever, and I was just like, it wasn't a real intimate relationship. I was just his landlord, but I did work with him at the Chuck Wagon, too. Oh, and I remember, like, at the Christmas party, he was just totally drunk out of his mind. I mean, we all were pretty much just like, party time, and he wasn't belligerent. He didn't change. His personality didn't change. He was just the same little meek Russell. And I remember him coming up to me and saying, when you get the chance, Sherry, can I have a dance? Which we never did get around to, but now I just want to shake him. You know, what in the hell were you thinking? What were you thinking?
Come out and find me. I'm here on the fence. I'm only just slightly broken and bent.
The fence. I've been out there 4 times. I've taken visitors. That place had become a pilgrimage site. Clearly, that's a very powerful, personal experience to go out there. It is so stark and so empty, and you can't help but think of Matthew there for 18 hours in nearly freezing temperature. With that view up there, and isolated.
Phil Labrie, a friend of Matthew's, took us to the fence this morning. I broke down the minute I touched it. I feel such a strong kinship with this young man. On the way back, I made sure that no one saw me crying.
Greg was crying on the way back. I couldn't bring myself to tears, but I felt the same way. I have an interview this afternoon with Aaron Kreifels. He's the boy who found Matthew out there at the fence. I don't think I'm up for it right now. I'll see if someone else can do it.
Well, I took off on my bicycle around 5 o'clock p.m. from my dorm. I just kind of felt like going for a ride, so I went up to the top of Cactus Canyon, and I'm not super familiar with the area, so on the way back down, I was just sort of picking the way to go, which now it makes me think that God wanted me to find him, because there's no way that I was gonna go that way. So I was in some deep-ass sand, and I wanted to turn around, but for some reason, I kept going. And I went along, and there was this rock on the ground, and I just drilled and went straight over the handlebars and ended up on the ground. So I got up, and I was just kind of dusting myself off and looking around, and that's when I noticed something, which ended up to be Matt. He was just kind of lying there by the fence. I thought it was a scarecrow. I mean, I was like, Halloween's coming up, thought it was a Halloween gag, so I didn't think much of it. So I got my bike, and I walked around to the other side of the fence that was there. It was a buck-style fence. And that's when as I got closer, that's when I noticed his hair. And that was a major key to me realizing that it was a human being, was his hair. Because I thought it was a dummy, seriously. I even noticed his chest going up and down, and I still thought it was a dummy, you know? I just thought it was some kind of mechanism. But when I saw hair, I knew it was a human being. So I ran to the nearest house. I just ran as fast as I could, and I called the police.
I responded to the call, and when I got there, at first the only thing I could see was partially somebody's feet, and I got out of my vehicle and I raced over. I seen what appeared to be a young man, 13 or 14 years old maybe, because he was so tiny, laying on his back and tied to the bottom end of a pole. I did the best I could, and the gentleman that was laying on the ground, Matthew Shepard, is covered in dry blood. There was dry blood underneath him, and he was barely breathing. He was doing the best he could. I was going to breathe for him. I couldn't get his mouth open. His mouth wouldn't open for me. He was covered in, like I said, partially dry blood all over his head. The only place that he did not have any blood on him, on his face, was where he had appeared to be crying down his face. His head was distorted, did not look normal. It looked as if he had a real harsh head wound.
I was working in the emergency room the night Matthew Shepard was brought in. I don't think that any of us can remember seeing a patient in that condition for a long time. It's not something you expect to see here. You expect it. You expect to see this kind of injuries from a car going down a hill at 80 miles an hour. You expect to see this gross kind of injuries from something like that. This horrendous, terrible thing. But you don't expect to see that from someone doing this to another person.
There was nothing I could do. I mean, if there was something I could have done to help him, I would have done it. I was just screaming at him at the top of my lungs, just trying to get something out of him. Like, hey, wake up, hello! But he didn't move. He didn't flinch. He didn't anything.
He was tied to the fence. His hands were thumbs out in what we call a cuffing position, the way we handcuff people. He was bound with a real thin white rope. We're on the bottom of the pole, about 4 inches up off the ground. His shoes were missing. He was tied extremely tight, so I used my boot knife and tried to slip it between the rope and his wrist. I had to be extremely careful not to harm Matthew any further.
Well, certainly you'd like to think that this was somebody from out of town who comes through and beats somebody. I mean, things like this happen, Shit happens. And it happens in Laramie, but if there's been someone who's been beaten repeatedly? Well, certainly, that's something that offends us. I think that's a good word. It offends us.
He was bound so tight. I finally got the knife through there. I'm sorry. So we rolled him over to his left side. When we did that, he just quit breathing, so immediately I put him back on his back. It was just enough of an adjustment for me to cut him free there. I seen the EMS unit trying to get to the location. And once they got there, we were able to put a neck collar on him. We put him on a backboard and we scooted him from underneath the fence. And then Rob drove them to Ivinson's hospital emergency room.
Now, the strange thing is, 20 minutes before Matthew came in, Aaron McKinney was brought in by his girlfriend. Now, I guess he had gotten into a fight later on that night back in town. So I'm working on Aaron, and the ambulance comes in with Matthew. Now, at this point, I still don't know that there's a connection at all. So I tell Aaron to wait, and I go ahead and treat Matthew. So I have Aaron in one room of the ER, and Matthew in another room. 2 doors down. Now, as soon as we saw Matthew, we knew that his care was beyond our capabilities. Called a neurosurgeon in Poudre Valley, and he was on the road within an hour and 15 minutes, I think.
They showed me a picture. Days later, they showed me a picture of Matthew. I would have never recognized him.
Then, 2 days later, I found out the connection, and I was very struck. I mean, they were 2 kids. They were both my patients, and they were 2 kids. I took care of both of them, both of their bodies, and for a brief moment, I wondered if this is how God feels when he looks down at us, how we're all his kids, our bodies, our souls, and I felt a great deal of compassion for both of them.
Well, the news reports started trickling out on Thursday, but no names were mentioned. The brutality of the crime wasn't mentioned. All that was mentioned was that there was a man, a Laramie man, found beaten out on the prairie, basically. Later that evening, they mentioned his name. It was like, that's not my student. That's not the Matthew Shepard I know. That's not this person that I've been meeting with.
I was in the coffee shop and someone pulled me aside and said, I don't know much, but they say there's been a young man who's been beaten in Laramie. And they say his name is Matthew Shepard. And then he said, do you think it could be our Matthew? And I said, yeah, it sure sounds like it could be our Matthew. So I called up my sister Trish and I said, tell me what you know, because I'm like, I don't know anything and I need to know something.
So I'm talking to my sister on the phone, and that's when the whole story came up on Channel 5 News, and it was just like, ba-boom.
And the news reports kept rolling in. Young University of Wyoming student. His age, his description. It's like, oh my God.
And I felt sick to my stomach. It's just instantly sick to my stomach. And I had to tell Romaine, yes, it was Matthew. It was your friend.
I'll tell you, it's really overwhelming. So Friday morning, I first hear about it. I walk out of class and boom, there it is in the branding iron. So I rush to the nearest newsstand because I want to find out more about it. I buy a Laramie boomerang. I rush home, and before I can even open the paper, my boss, he gives me a call, and he's like,
did you hear about what happened?
I go, yeah. Well, was he in the bar Tuesday night? And I go, yes, he was. You gotta come down to the bar right now. We gotta talk about this. We gotta discuss what's gonna go on.
I was starting to get pretty upset, but still the severity wasn't out yet.
It was Thursday afternoon. I got a call. We just got a kid in from Wyoming, and it looks like he may be the victim of a hate crime. There's a couple of newspaper reporters here asking questions. And so we agreed that we needed one spokesperson. As CEO, I'll do that, and we'll try and gather as much information as we can.
And then I watched the 10 o'clock news. They started talking about the nature, the seriousness of it.
So I'm on the phone with Mickelson, and he's like, we gotta go down to the arraignment. We gotta identify these guys, make sure they were in the bar that night. So we go to the arraignment.
Our focus today turns to Laramie, Wyoming, and the Albany County Courthouse, where Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson are being charged for the brutal beating of Matthew Shepard, a gay University of Wyoming student.
The arraignment was on Friday, right around lunchtime. And I said, I'm just going. I just took off. There were about 100 people from town and probably as many news media by that point. A lot more of the details had come out. The fact that the perpetrators themselves were kids, local kids, who everybody who's from around here has some relationship to. And what everyone, I think, was really waiting on pins and needles for is what happened. And what happened, now there's 200 people in the room at this point. They walked in their complete orange jumpsuits and shackles. And you could have heard a pin drop. It was incredibly solemn. I mean, lots of people were teary at this point, but then the judge came in and did a reading, and it's a statement of facts, and the reading of the facts was...
The essential facts are that the defendants, Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson, met Matthew Shepard at the Fireside Bar. After Mr. Shepard confided that he was gay, both subjects deceived Mr. Shepard into leaving with them in their vehicle to a remote area. Upon arrival at said area, both subjects tied the victim to a buck fence, robbed him, tortured him, and beat him. Both defendants were later contacted by officers of the Laramie Police Department who observed inside the cab of their pickup a credit card and a pair of black patent leather shoes belonging to the victim, Matthew Shepard.
I don't think there was anybody who was left in that courtroom who wasn't crying by the end of it.
Wallet containing $20
I mean, it lasted
cash, his shoes,
5
and other
minutes,
items,
but it
and
kept
obtained
getting
the victim's
more
address
and more
in order
horrific.
to later burglarize his home.
Ending with,
Said defendants left the victim begging for his life.
How could this happen? I don't think people understand. Even I don't understand how someone could do something like this. We have one of the most vocal gay populations in the state. And it's pretty much live and let live.
well, my secret hope was that they weren't from here. And then, of course, you can create that distance. We don't grow children like that here. Well, it's pretty clear that we do grow children like that here. So that was the arraignment. And my response was pretty catatonic. Not sleeping, not eating. Just don't leave me alone right now.
More and more details kept coming out about the sheer brutality, motivations, how this happened. And then, quite frankly, the media descended and there was no time for us to reflect on it anymore.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Laramie, Wyoming, often called the Gem City of the Plains, is now at the eye of the storm.
Aaron McKinney and his friend Russell Henderson came from the poor side of town.
As the gay college student lay hospitalized in critical condition,
they lived in trailer parks and scratched on a living.
People would like you to think that what happened to Matthew was an exception to the rule, but it was an extreme version of what happens in our schools on a daily basis.
It's a tough business, as Matt Shepard knew, and his friends all knew, to be gay in cowboy country.
was huge. It was herds. We're talking hundreds of reporters, which makes a big dent in this town's population. There were news reporters everywhere, news trucks everywhere, on campus, everywhere in the town. And we're not used to that type of attention to begin with. We're not used to that type of exposure.
These people are predators. Like, this one journalist caught one of the judges in the bathroom at the urinal and was like asking him questions. And the judge was like, "Excuse me, can I please have some privacy?" And the journalist was like actually offended that he asked for privacy. I mean, this is not how journalism started, like the Gutenberg press, you know?
And I tell you something else. When hard copy came and taped me, I taped them at the exact same time. I have every word I ever said on tape. So if they ever want to try anything funny, they better watch their fucking ass.
I'm outraged. I'm sickened by the heinous crimes committed on Matthew Shepard. I would like to extend my most heartfelt sympathies to the family.
Governor, you haven't pushed hate crime legislation in the past.
Well, I'd like to urge the people of Wyoming against overreacting in any way that gives one group special rights over others. We will wait and see if the vicious beatings on Matthew Shepard is motivated by hate. Thank you.
You've got the beginning of a news story where they have in the graphics, "Murder in Wyoming." Like Wyoming's dripping red, like it's got blood on it or something. And we're here like, what's the point? This is sensationalism. And we're here like, wait a minute. We had the guys in jail in less than a day. I think that's pretty damn good.
And for us to be more or less maligned, and that we're not a good community, we are. Well, the majority of us are good people.
You get a bad apple every once in a while, and I think the gay community saw this as an opportunity, said, let's exploit this.
Had this been a heterosexual these two boys decided to take out and rob, this never would have made the national news. Now my son is guilty before he's even had a trial.
Look, I do think that the media's held people accountable because it made people think. Because people were sitting in their homes watching TV and listening to CNN and watching Dan Rather and going, Jesus Christ, well, that's not how it is here. Well, how is it here?
Matthew Shepard was admitted in critical condition approximately 9:15 p.m. October 7th. When he arrived, he was unresponsive and breathing support was being provided. Matthew's major injuries upon arrival consisted of hypothermia and a fracture from behind his head to just in front of his right ear. This has caused bleeding in the brain as well as pressure in the brain. There were also several lacerations on his head, face, and neck. Matthew's temperature has fluctuated over the last 24 hours, ranging from 98 degrees to 106 degrees. We have had difficulty in controlling his temperature. Matthew's parents arrived at 7 p.m. October 9th and are now at his bedside. Here is a statement from them. First of all, we want to thank the American public for their kind thoughts about Matthew and their fond wishes for his speedy recovery. We appreciate your prayers and goodwill, and we know that they are something that Matthew would appreciate too. We also have a special request for the members of the media. Matthew is very much in need of his family at this time, and we ask that you respect our privacy as well as Matthew's so we can concentrate all of our efforts, thoughts, and love on our son. Thank you so much.
Both Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson pled not guilty to charges. Their girlfriends, Chastity Paisley and Kristen Price, also pled not guilty after being charged as accessories after the fact. On our next trip, we spoke with the Chief Investigating Officer, Detective Rob Debris of the Albany County Sheriff's Department.
When I went down to Poudre Valley where Matthew was, the thing that bothered me the most was seeing him, touching him. As a homicide detective, you look at bodies. This boy was sitting there, fighting all his life, trying to make it. I wanted it so by the book, you know?
I keep seeing that picture in my head from when I found him, and it's not pleasant whatsoever. I don't want it to be there. I want to like get it out. And that's the biggest part for me is seeing that picture in my head, and it's kind of unbelievable to me that I happen to be the person who found him. The big question with me is like with my religion is, why did God want me to find him?
I know how to take care of myself, and I was irrationally terrified. And what that means is not letting my 12-year-old walk the streets, seeing a pickup truck pull a U-turn and immediately think it's coming after me, and having to stop because I'm shaking so bad. And in fact, the truck was not coming after me, but my response was to have my heart in my mouth.
Ultimately, no matter how you dice it, I had an opportunity. If I had amazing hindsight of 2020 to have stopped what occurred. And I kept thinking to myself, I shouldn't have had my head down for those 20 seconds washing those dishes. These guys shouldn't have been talking to that guy. I should have noticed. I don't know what I was thinking.
So you do a lot of studying. You spend hours and hours and hours. You study, and you study. Talking to the officers, making sure they understand, talking to your witnesses again, and then going back to... I get this flash of seeing Matthew, and I wanted it so tight that there was no way they were going to get out of this.
One of the things that happened when I got to the fence, it was just such an overwhelming amount of blood. We tried to wear protective gloves, but we had a real cheap sheriff at the time, and he bought us shit gloves, You put them on, and they just kept breaking. So finally you just ran out of gloves, Well, you think, don't hesitate, that's what your mind tells you all the time. Don't hesitate. And so you try and help Matthew and find an airway, and that's what you do,
Now, what I didn't tell you before is that Reggie is my daughter. And when she first told me she wanted to be a police officer, well, I said there was not a better choice for her. She could handle whatever came her way.
Probably a day and a half later, the hospital called me and told me Matthew had HIV. And the doctor said, you've been exposed, and you've had a bad exposure. Because you could see I'd been building a lean-to for my llamas, and my hands had a bunch of open cuts on them. So I was kind of screwed, And you think, oh shoot,
Would you like to talk about losing sleep?
So I said to the doctor, okay, what do I do? And he said, get up here. So I got up there. We started the ATZ drugs immediately.
Now, they told me that's a medication that if it's administered 36 hours after you've been exposed, it can maybe help you from getting the disease.
That is a mean, nasty medicine. Mean. I've lost 10 pounds and a whole lot of my hair.
And quite frankly, I wanted to lash out at somebody. Not at Matthew. Please understand that. Not one of us was mad at Matthew. But I maybe wanted to squeeze McKinney's head off. And I think about Henderson and just two absolutely human beings who have caused so much grief for so many people. It's been terrible for my whole family, but mainly for her and her kids.
I think it brought home to my girls what their mom does for a living.
Well, Reggie, you know what I'm going to tell you now.
And my parents, they both said the same damn thing.
You're quitting this damn job.
And it's just a parent thing, They don't want you getting hurt.
Like I said, there's a right way, a wrong way, and then there's Reggie's way.
Oh, for God's sakes, lighten up, Francis.
You are so stubborn.
They say I'm stubborn and I don't believe them. I just think, all right, I've heard your opinion. Now here's mine. I'm 39 years old, What can they do? Spank me?
Reggie, don't give me any ideas.
It'd be pretty funny, What can they say?
I just hope she doesn't go before me. I just couldn't handle that.
That first week alone, vigils for Matthew Shepard were held in Laramie, Denver, Fort Collins, and Colorado Springs. Soon after, in Detroit, Chicago, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Nashville, Minneapolis, and Portland, Maine, among others. In Los Angeles, 5,000 people gathered. And in New York City, a political rally ended in civil disobedience and hundreds of arrests. And the Poudre Valley Hospital website received close to 1 million visitors from across the country and around the world, all expressing hope for Matthew's recovery.
As of 9 a.m. today, Matthew Shepard remains in critical condition. The family continues to emphasize that the media respect their privacy. The family also wants to thank the American public for their thoughts and concerns for their son.
I'm still learning about myself. You know, I don't think I know enough to be able to say that homosexuality is right. Well, when you've been raised your whole life that it's wrong, and I guess right now I don't agree with it. Yeah, that I don't agree with it. Maybe that's just because I couldn't do it. I mean, I don't think that's how God intended it to happen. But I don't hate homosexuals, you know, and I'm not going to persecute them or anything like that. I mean, that's not going to get in the way between me and the other person, like, at all.
Well, it's taught in schools that being gay is okay and yada yada yada. Well, my kids asked me, I'd set them down and I'd say, this is what gay people do and this is what animals do, okay? This is the life, this is the lifestyle, this is what they do, and this is why I believe it's wrong.
Well, there's more gay people around than what you'd think. It doesn't bother anybody, because most of them that are gay or lesbian, they know damn well who to talk to. If you step out of line, you're asking for it. Some people are saying he made a pass at them. You don't pick up regular people. And I'm not excusing their actions, but it made me feel better, because it was partially Matthew Shepard's fault, and partially the guys who did it. You know, maybe it's 50-50.
Yes, as a lesbian, I was more concerned for my safety. I think we all were, and I think it's because somewhere deep inside, we all know that it could happen to us at any time, you know?
And I mean, I would be too afraid to walk down the street and display any sort of physical affection for my partner. You just don't do that here in Laramie.
Well, there's this whole idea, you know, you leave me alone, I leave you alone. It's even in some of the Western literature. Live and let live. That is such crap. I mean, I tell my friends that. Even my gay friends bring it up sometimes. And I'm like, that's crap, you know? I mean, basically what it boils down to is if I don't tell you I'm a fag, you won't beat the crap out of me? What's so great about that? That's some great philosophy.
This is a young person who read my statement in the Denver Post story and sent an email to me directly and said, "You and the straight people of Laramie and Wyoming are guilty of the beating of Matthew Shepard, just as the Germans who look the other way are guilty of the deaths of the Jews, the Gypsies, and the homosexuals. You have taught your straight children to hate their gay and lesbian brothers and sisters, unless and until you acknowledge that Matt Shepard's beating is not just a random occurrence, not just the work of a couple of random crazies. You have Matthew's blood on your hands." And, well, I can't begin to tell you what that does to a person. You can't possibly know what I'm thinking. You can't possibly know how this has affected me and my family and my community.
We went to the candle vigil, and it was so good to be with people who felt like shit. I kept feeling like I don't deserve to feel this bad, you know? And someone got up and he said, blah, 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 blah. And then he said, I'm saying it wrong, but basically he said, "Come on, guys, let's show the world that Laramie is not this kind of town." But it is this kind of town. If it wasn't this kind of town, why did it happen here? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, that's just totally a lie. Because it happened here. So how could it not be this kind of town where this kind of thing happens? Like, that's just totally like looking at an Escher painting and being all confused. Like, it's totally like circular logic. So how can you even say that? We have to mourn this. And we need to be sad that we live in a town, a state, a country where this kind of shit happens. These are people trying to distance themselves from this crime. And we need to own this crime, I feel. We all need to own it. We are like this. We are like this. We are like this.
I was at the Fireside Bar one afternoon and I ran into two friends of Aaron McKinney, Shannon and Jen.
You knew Aaron well, right?
Yeah, we both did. When I first found out, I thought it was really, really awful. And I don't know whether Aaron was fucked up or whether he was coming down or what. But Matthew had money. I mean, shit, he had better clothes than me. Matthew was a little rich bitch.
You shouldn't call him a rich bitch, though. That's not right.
I'm not saying he's a bad guy either. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And said the wrong things. And I don't know, I won't lie to you. There have been times that I was all messed up on meth. I thought about going out and robbing. I mean, I never did, but it was there. It's easy money.
Aaron's done that thing before. They both done it. I know one night they went down to Cheyenne to go do it, and they came back with probably $300. I don't know if they ever chose like gay people as their particular targets, but anyone that looked like they had a lot of money and, you know, they could outnumber or overpower was fair game.
Do you think there was any homophobia at all involved in this?
It probably would have pissed him off that Matthew was gay because he didn't like, well, the gay people that I've seen him interact with, he was fine with as long as, you know, they didn't hit on him or it didn't come up.
As long as they weren't doing it in front of him.
Do you get the impression that he knew other gay people?
Yeah, I'm sure he knew people that are gay. I mean, he worked up at the KFC, and there are a couple people up there that, yeah. I'm not saying it's bad or anything, because, I don't know, half the people I know here in Laramie are gay.
What would you guys say to Aaron if you saw him right now?
First, I'd ask him if he'd ever do any more tweets.
If I saw Aaron now, I'd be like, man, why'd you fuck up like that? But I want to make sure he's doing okay in there. But I'm sure he is, though. I probably just want to, like, hang out with him. I bet he wants one so bad.
Go with him.
You guys went to Laramie High?
Yeah, can't you tell? We're a product of our society.
On a day that is usually reserved for nothing more than collegiate exuberance and the fortunes of the University of Wyoming football team, this community on the High Plains had a different kind of homecoming Saturday, as many searched their souls in the wake of a vicious, apparent anti-gay hate crime.
This was homecoming weekend. There were a lot of people in town. There was a homecoming parade that was scheduled. And then the students all organized to tag onto the back of it, you know, behind the banner supporting Matt. And everybody was wearing the armbands that the students had created.
I live in the center of town, and my apartment has 2 windows that face 2 opposite streets. One the north and one the south. And that's exactly the homecoming parade route. Now, on the day of the parade, I had a cast on my leg because of a fall, and I was really disappointed because I wanted to walk with the people who were marching for Matthew, but I couldn't. So I watched the parade from my window instead, and it was just... I'm 52 years old, and I'm gay. I've lived here my entire life, and I've seen a lot. And when I saw the tag at the end of the homecoming parade, it was beautiful. Over 100 people walking for Matthew. And then the parade reached the end of the block and went to make a U-turn to go down the other street. And so I moved to the other window so I can wait for it to come back down.
I was right up in the front, you know, where they're holding this banner for Matthew. And let me tell you, I mean, I haven't had goosebumps so long in my life. I mean, a mass of people, families, like mothers holding their 6-year-old kids, tying these armbands, you know, around them and trying to explain to them what these armbands mean. And I mean, it was incredible. It was seriously, it was one of the most beautiful things I've probably done in my whole life.
Now, 10 minutes or so went by, and sure enough, the parade started coming down the street again, and I noticed the most incredible thing. The tag at the end of the parade had grown 5 times. 500 people walking for Matthew. 500 people. Could you imagine? I started to cry. Tears were streaming down my face, and all I could think was, thank God I got to see this in my lifetime. And my second thought was, thank you, Matthew.
I really haven't been all that involved per se. My husband's a highway patrolman, so that's really the only way I've known about it. Now, when I first found out, I thought it was horrible. I can't, nobody deserves that. I don't care who you are. But the other thing that was not brought out, at the same time that happened, that patrolman was killed. And there was nothing. They didn't say anything about the old man that killed him. He was driving down the road, and he shouldn't have been driving, and killed him. It was just a little piece in the paper, and we lost one of our guys. My husband worked with him. This man was brand new on the force. But here's one of ours, and it's just a little piece in the paper. And a lot of it is my feeling that the media is portraying Matthew Shepard as a saint and making him as a martyr, and I don't think he was. I don't think he was that pure. Now, I didn't know him, but there's just so many things about him that I found out that it's scary. About his character and spreading AIDS and a few other things, being the kind of person that he was. He was just a barfly, and I think he pushed himself around. I think he flaunted it. Everybody's got problems, but why they chose to exemplify him, I don't know. What's the difference if you're gay? A hate crime is a hate crime. If you murder somebody, you hate him. It has nothing to do with if you're gay or a prostitute or whatever. I don't understand. I don't understand.
This is one of the last days on our second trip to Laramie. Greg and I have been conducting interviews nonstop. We're exhausted.
We are to meet Father Roger at 7:30 in the morning. I was wishing we could skip it all together, but we have to follow through to the end. So here we go. 7:30 a.m., 2 queers and a Catholic priest.
Matthew Shepard has served us well. You realize that? He has served us well. And I do not mean to condemn Matthew to perfection, but I cannot mention anyone who has done more for this community than Matthew Shepard. And I'm not going to sit here and say I was this bold guy, no fear. I was scared. I was very vocal in this community when this happened, and I thought, should we call the bishop and ask him permission to do the vigil? And I was like, hell. No, I'm not going to do that. His permission doesn't make it correct. You realize that? And I'm not knocking bishops, but what is correct is correct. You people are just out here on a search, though. I will do this. I will trust you people that if you write a play of this, that you say it right. Say it correct. I think you have a responsibility to do that. Don't make matters worse. You think violence is what they did to Matthew? And they did do violence to Matthew. But every time that you're called a fag, or you're called a les or whatever.
Or a dyke.
A dyke, yeah, a dyke. Do you realize that is violence? That is the seed of violence. And I would resent it immensely if you used anything I said to somehow cultivate that kind of violence. Even in its smallest form, I would resent it immensely. You need to know that.
Thank you, Father, for saying that.
Just deal with what is true. You know what is true. You need to do your best to say it correct.
Yeah, I was in there. I was in jail with Aaron in December.
got thrown over Christmas, saw battery 2 counts. I don't want to talk about it. But we're sitting there eating our Christmas dinner, right? My stuffing, motherfucking bread, my little roll and whatnot. And I turned to him, I said, hey homie, yo, tell me something, please. Why would you, all right, think about how I worded this. Why would you kill a faggot if you're gonna be destined to be a faggot later? You know? I mean, think about it. He's either gonna get humped a lot or he's gonna die. So why would you do that? Think about it. I don't understand that. Yo, you know what he said to me? Yo, honest to God, this is what he said. He goes, he tried to grab my dick. That's what he said. Yo, he's dumb. He wouldn't even act like it was nothing. Yo, I'd be scared to go to prison if I was those 2 boys.
Hello?
Reverend,
Yes. Hello.
I believe your wife told you a bit about why I'm contacting you.
Yes, she did. And let me tell you, I don't really know that I want to talk to anybody about any of this incident. I am somewhat involved,
Yes,
and I just don't
I
think...
completely understand, and I don't blame you. You know, I went to your service on Sunday.
You went to the services on Sunday?
Yes, I did.
On Sunday?
Yes, this past Sunday.
Did I meet you?
Yes, you welcomed me at the beginning, I believe.
I see. Well, let me tell you, I'm not afraid to be controversial or to speak my mind, and that is not necessarily the views of my congregation per se. Now, as I said, I am somewhat involved. That the people in the case... Well, the girlfriend of the accused is a member of our congregation, and one of the accused has visited. Now, those 2 people, the accused, they have forfeited their lives. We've been after the 2 I mentioned for ages, trying to get them to live right, to do right. Now, one boy is on suicide watch, and I am working with him. And until they put him in the chair and turn on the juice, I will work for his salvation. I think they deserve the death penalty, and I will try to deal with them spiritually.
Right, I understand.
Now, as for the victim, I know that lifestyle is legal, but I will tell you one thing. I hope that Matthew Shepard, as he was tied to that fence, that he had a moment to reflect on when someone had spoken the word of the Lord to him, and that before he slipped into a coma, he had a chance to reflect on his lifestyle.
Thank you, Reverend. I appreciate your speaking with me.
About 11:30 that night, I had just barely gone to bed, and Margot, our chief operating officer, called and said his blood pressure began to drop. Well, let's wait and see. She called about 10 after. He just died. So I quick got dressed and came in, and I went into the ICU where the family was, and Judy put her arms around me, and I put my arms around her, and we just stood there, honestly, for about 10 minutes, because what else do you do? And then I said, and I'm gonna go out there now and tell the whole world that this has happened. Because by this point, it was clear to us that it was the world. It was the whole world. And so Judy told me what she wanted me to say, and I went out there at 4:00 a.m. At 12 midnight on Monday, October 12th, Matthew Shepard's blood pressure began to drop. We immediately notified the family, who was already at the hospital. At 12:53 a.m., Matthew Shepard died. His family was at his bedside. The family did release the following statement. The family asked me to express their sincerest gratitude to the entire world for their overwhelming response to their son.
The family was grateful that they did not have to decide whether or not to continue life support for their son. Like a good son, he was caring to the end and removed all stress or guilt from the family. He came to the world premature and he left premature. Matthew's mother said, "Go home. Hug your kids. And don't let a day go by without telling them that you love them."
And I don't know how I let that happen. I lost it on national television, but we had been up for like 72 hours and I had gone home and gone to bed for like half an hour and had to get up and come in, and I don't know, I guess I was just, I don't know, but in a moment of complete brain deadness while I was reading her statement, I thought about my own 4 daughters and go home. Hug your kids. Oh, and she doesn't have her kids anymore. And I'm just there and I'm like, this is so lame. And then people started sending us emails and letters, and most of them were generally very kind, but I did get this one. This guy wrote me and said, "Do you cry like a baby on TV for all your patients or just the faggots?" And as I've told you before, homosexuality is not a lifestyle with which I agree, but having been thrown into this, I guess I just didn't understand the magnitude with which people could hate. And out of all the letters and emails that we got, most of them were generally very kind. But there were 2 or 3 that were like this. Most of them were, "Thank you for your caring and compassion." And Matthew had caring and compassion from the moment he got here.
I spoke with Doc today and told him we would soon be coming back out for the upcoming trials of Russell Henderson and Ann McKinney. And this is what he had to say.
I tell you what, if they put those 2 boys to death, that would be going against everything Matt would be thinking about on them. I mean, Matt, he wouldn't want those 2 boys to die. He would want to leave them with hope. HOPE. Just like the whole world thought Matt was survived, hoped Matt was survived. The whole thing, you see, the whole thing ropes around hope. HOPE.
So the day of the funeral, I remember it was snowing, these big, huge, wet snowflakes, and I pull up and there's thousands of people. I mean, dressed in all black, umbrellas everywhere. And there were 2 churches. There was the one for the immediate family, people of that nature, and then there was another one for anyone else who wanted to be there. And then there were hundreds of people that didn't fit in either one of the churches. So there was this park nearby, and that's where these people, they were huddling up, and this park was full.
Today's liturgy is an Easter liturgy. It finds its meaning in the resurrection. The service invites your full participation. We pray to the Lord.
Hear us, Lord.
Let us pray.
And I guess it was like the worst storm that they have had. Like, that anyone could tell. Like, trees fell down and the power went out for a couple days because of it. And I just thought, it's like the forces of the universe at work, Whatever higher spirit, is like that blows storms was blowing this storm.
For our brother Matthew, let us pray to our Lord Jesus Christ, who said, "I am the resurrection and the life." We pray to the Lord.
Hear us, Lord.
Lord.
My most striking memory from the funeral is seeing Reverend Fred Phelps from Kansas. That scene go up in the park.
Do you believe the Bible? Do you believe you're supposed to separate the precious from the vile? You don't believe that part of the Bible? You stand over there, ignorant of the fact that the Bible, 2 times for every verse, it talks about God's love. It talks about God's hate.
We pray to the Lord.
A bunch of high schoolers who had just gotten out early, they came over and they started yelling at the people in the protest, the Fred Phelps people. And across the street you had people lining up for the funeral. Well, I remember a guy. I remember this skinhead, and he came over and he was dressed in leather and spikes everywhere. And he came over from where the protest was. And I just remember thinking, oh, this is gonna be a really ugly confrontation. But instead, he came over and he led them in Amazing Grace.
We wouldn't be here if this was just another murder the state was going to deal with. The state deals with hundreds of murders every single day. But this murder is different because the fags are bringing us out here trying to make Matthew Shepard into a poster boy for the gay lifestyle. And we're going to answer it. It's just that simple.
6 months later, the company returned to Laramie for the trial of Russell Henderson, the first of the 2 perpetrators. It was to be a capital murder trial. When we go to Albany County Courthouse, Fred Phelps was already there.
You don't like that attribute of God? That perfect attribute of God? Well, we love that attribute of God, and we're going to preach it, because God's hatred is pure. It's a determination. It's a determination that he's going to send some people to hell. That's God's hatred. We're standing here with God's message. We are standing here with God's message. Is homosexuality, is being a fag okay? What do you mean it's not for you to judge? If God doesn't hate fags, why does he put them in hell? You see the barrenness and sterility of your silly arguments when set over against some solid gospel truth? Barren and sterile, like your lifestyle, your silly arguments.
After seeing Fred Phelps protesting at Matthew's funeral and finding out he was coming to Laramie for the trial of Russell Henderson, I decided that someone needed to go toe-to-toe with this guy and show the differences. And I think when people are talking about hatred as much as the nation is right now, that it's really important to show that there is a better way of dealing with that kind of hatred. So, our idea is to dress up like angels. And we've designed an angel outfit, and our wings are huge. I mean, they're big ass wings. And there'll be 10 to 20 of us that are angels. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna encircle Phelps. And because of our big wings, we are going to completely block him. So this big ass band of angels comes in and we don't say a fucking word. We just turn around and stand there. And we are a group of people bringing forth a message of peace and love and compassion. And we're calling ourselves Angel Action. Yeah, this 21-year-old little lesbian is ready to walk the line with him.
The court is in session.
As soon as they started jury selection, everybody was coming into my shop with, I don't want to be on that trial, I hope I don't get called, or, oh my God, I've been called, how do I get off? Just wanted to get as far away as they could. Very fearful that they would have to be a part of that jury. And then I heard Henderson had to sit in the courtroom while they questioned the prospective jurors. And one of the questions that they ask is, would you be willing to put this person to death? And I understand that a lot of the comments were, yes, I would.
Yes, I would, Your Honor.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
No problem.
Yep.
Well, can you imagine hearing that? You know,
Yes, sir.
juror after juror
Yep.
after juror.
Yep. Yes, sir. Yep.
Yes, sir.
You entered a not guilty plea earlier, Mr. Henderson, but I understand that you wish to change that plea today. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You understand, Mr. Henderson, that the recommended sentence here is 2 life sentences?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that those may run concurrently or they may run consecutively?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Henderson, I will now ask how you wish to plead. Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Before the courts decide whether the sentence will be running concurrently or consecutively, I understand that there are statements to be made by at least one individual.
As the grandmother and the person who raised Russell, along with my family, we have written the following statement. Our hearts ache for the pain and suffering that the shepherds have went through. We have prayed for your families since the very beginning. Many times throughout the day, I have thought about Matt, and you will continue to be in our thoughts and prayers, because we know that your pain will never go away. You have showed such mercy in allowing us to have this plea, and we are so grateful that you are giving us all the opportunity to live. Your Honor, we, as a family, hope, as you sentence Russell, that you will do it concurrently to life terms. For the Russell we know and love, we humbly plead, Your Honor, to not take Russell completely out of our lives forever.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson, you have a constitutional right to make a statement if you would like to do so. Do you have anything you would like to say?
Yes, I would, Your Honor. Mr. and Mrs. Shepherd, there is not a moment that goes by that I don't see what happened that night. I know what I did was very wrong, and I greatly regret what I did. You have my greatest sympathy for what happened. And I hope that one day you will be able to find it in your hearts to forgive me. Your Honor, I know what I did was wrong. I'm very sorry for what I did. I'm ready to pay my debt for what I did.
Mr. Henderson, you drove the vehicle that took Matthew Shepherd to his death. You bound him to that fence in order that he might be more savagely beaten and in order that he might not escape to tell his tale. You left him out there for 18 hours, knowing full well that he was out there, perhaps having an opportunity to save his life, and you did nothing. Mr. Henderson, this court does not believe that you really feel any true remorse for your part in this matter, and I wonder whether you fully realize the gravity of what you've done. The court finds it appropriate, therefore, that sentence be ordered as follows. As to count 3, that being felony murder with robbery, you are to serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. On count 1, kidnapping, that you serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. Sentencing for count 1 to run consecutively to sentencing for count 3.
After the hearing, we talked with Russell Henderson's Mormon home teacher.
I've known Russell's family for 38 years. Russell's only 21, so I've known him his entire life. So when this happened, you can imagine disbelief. After the sentencing, the church held a disciplinary council, and the result of that meeting was to excommunicate Russell from the church. And what that means is that your name is taken off the records of the church. Russell's reaction to this was not positive. It hurt him too, to realize at that moment how serious a transgression he'd committed. But I will not desert Russell as a matter of my religion and my friendship with the family.
Before we left Laramie, we met again with Rebecca Hilliker at the theater department. She's producing Angels in America this year at the university.
I think that's the focus the university has taken, is that we have a lot of work to do, that we have an obligation to find ways to reach our students. And the question is, how do we move? How do we reach a whole state where there's some really deep-seated hostility towards gays? How do we reach them? This is the beginning. And guess who's auditioning for the lead?
My parents were like, Angels in America? Isn't that scene you did in high school? And I was like, yeah. And we got into this huge argument. And the best thing that I knew I had on them is, it was just after they had seen me in a performance of Macbeth. And like, I murdered like a little kid, Lady Macduff, these two other guys. And my mom goes, well, you know homosexuality is a sin. She kept saying that. And I'm like, Mom, I just played a murderer tonight. You didn't seem to have a problem with that. I tell you, I've never prepared so much for an audition in my life. Never, ever. Not even close.
Not having to deal that much with the gay society here in Laramie, well, once we started working on the case and actually started speaking to the people that were gay, well, it sort of hit home. This is America. You don't have the right to feel that fear. And there's gonna be people that still hold with the old ideals, and I was probably one of them 14 months ago. But I'm not gonna put up with it. And I'm not gonna listen to it. And if they don't like my views on it, fine. The door goes both ways. I even lost a couple buddies over it. I don't care. I feel more comfortable and I can sleep at night.
Well, you're tested every 3 months. So I was able to have the DNA test done. So they brought me up to Fort Collins, drew the blood there, flew it out to Michigan, did the DNA test there, and what was a week later, I knew I was negative for good.
I'll tell you, we were all on our knees saying Hail Marys.
You're just elated, and you think, thank God.
So what's the first thing she does?
I stuck my tongue right in my husband's mouth. You're just so happy, You're just so happy, and you think, yeah, I hope I did this service well. I hope I did it with some kind of integrity. So you're just so happy, and my daughter's just bawled.
They were so happy.
And the force.
Oh boy.
Even now I got shit-faced. Everyone was there and buying drinks, and everybody hugged and cried, and I kissed everybody who walked through the door.
Reggie, they don't need to know that.
I didn't care if they were male or female, they each got a kiss on the lips.
Now what part of what I just said didn't you understand?
Get over it, Ma!
Almost a year today that Matthew Shepard died, the trial for Aaron James McKinney was set to begin.
Probably the question that most of you have on your mind is how the McKinney case will proceed. And it is the decision of the county attorney's office that it will be a death penalty case.
Part of me wants McKinney to get it, but I'm not very proud of that. I've been on and off and on. I can't say what I would do. I'm too personally involved.
Oh, I believe in the death penalty 100%. Because I want to make sure that guy's ass dies.
This is one instance where I truly believe with all my heart, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
I don't know about the death penalty, but I definitely don't want to see those two walk out of Rollins Penitentiary. Yeah, I'll pay my nickel, whatever, my little percentage of tax, nickel a day, to make sure that their asses stay in there. They don't ever see society again. That they definitely don't ever come into my bar again.
I don't really believe in the death penalty. It's too much for me, I don't think one person should be killed as redemption for his having killed another. Two wrongs don't make a right.
How can I protest if the Shepherds want McKinney dead? I just can't interfere in that. But on a personal level, I knew Aaron in grade school. We never called him Aaron. He was called AJ. How can we put AJ McKinney? How can we put AJ McKinney to death?
I think right now, our most important teachers must be Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney. They have to be our teachers. How did you learn? What did we as a society do to teach you that? See, I don't know if many people will let them be their teachers, but I think it would be wonderful if the judge said, in addition to your sentence, you must tell your story. You must tell your story.
All rise. State of Wyoming versus Aaron James McKinney, docket number 6381. The Honorable Barton R. Voigt is presiding. The court is in session.
During the trial of Aaron McKinney, the prosecution played a taped recording of his confession.
My name is Rob DeGree, Sergeant for the Sheriff's Office. You have the right to remain silent, and anything you say can or may be used against you in the court of law.
The following is an excerpt of that confession.
Okay, so you guys, you and Russ, you go to the fireside. You're at the fireside by yourselves, right?
Yeah.
Okay, where do you go after you leave the fireside?
Some dude wanted to ride home.
What's he look like?
Like a queer. Or
He
just a
looks like
queer-looking
a
dude.
queer?
Yeah, like a fag, you know.
Okay. How'd you meet him?
Well, he came up to us and asked for a ride home, and I thought, well, the dude's drunk, let's give him a ride home.
When did you and Russ talk about jacking him up?
Talked about it at the bar, I guess.
Okay. What happened
We
next?
drove him out past Walmart, and we get over there, and he starts grabbing my leg, he starts grabbing my genitals, and I'm like, hey man, I'm not a fucking faggot. If you do that again, you're gonna get it. So I hit him a couple times. I hit him pretty good, and I think I killed him.
What'd you beat him with?
I blacked out. My fist, pistol, the butt of the gun. Wondering what would happen to me. I had a few drinks, and I don't know. It was like I could see what was happening, but someone else was doing it. I don't know.
What did he say or do in the car that was the first thing that
He
made you...
grabbed my leg like he was gonna touch my balls.
When that defense team argued that McKinney did what he did because Matthew tried to make a pass at him, I mean, I just wanted to vomit. Because that's like saying it's okay. I mean, it's like the Twinkie defense when the guy killed Harvey Milk and Moscone. It's the same thing.
I guess a part of me didn't want the defense of them saying that it was gay bashing or gay panic, but a part of me was really grateful. I was really scared that in the trial they were going to say that it was a robbery or about drugs. So when they used the words gay panic as their defense, I felt, this is good. If nothing else, the truth is going to be told. The truth is coming out.
Did he ever try to defend himself against you or hit you back?
Yeah, he tried his little swings, but it wasn't very effective.
How many times did you hit him inside the truck before you guys stopped where you left him?
2, 3. 3 times with my fist, 6 times with the gun. No.
Did he ask you to stop?
Well, yeah, he was getting the shit beat out of him.
What'd he say?
After he asked to stop, most of all he was doing was screaming.
So Russ kind of dragged him over to the fence, I'm assuming, and tied him up?
Something like that. I just remember at first Russ was laughing, but then, we got all scared.
Was Matthew conscious when Russ tied him up?
Yeah. I said to Matt, turn around. That way he can't read my license plate because I was afraid he would go to the police. And then when I asked him to read it, he did. That's why I hit
Just
him
to be
a couple
sure.
more times.
So you obviously don't like gay people.
No, I don't.
Would you say you hate them?
I wouldn't say I hate them. You know, when they start doing stuff like that, yeah, I get pretty fucking
Did he
aggravated.
threaten you?
The gay dude?
Yeah.
No, not really.
Can you answer me one thing? Why'd you guys take his shoes?
I don't know. I would never get to see my son again now, huh?
I don't know. You'll probably go to court sometime today.
Today? You're gonna bring me in court today so I can plead not guilty?
No,
guilty?
no. You're just going to be arraigned today.
Is he gonna die for sure?
There is no doubt that Mr. Shepherd is going to die.
So what? They gonna give me 25 to life or just a death sentence and get it over with?
That's not our job. That's the judge's job and the jury.
Has the jury reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. We, the jury, empaneled and sworn to try the above entitled case, after having well and truly tried the matter, unanimously find as follows. As to the charge of kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of aggravated robbery, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of first-degree felony murder, kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of first-degree felony murder and robbery, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty.
Aaron McKinney was found guilty of felony murder, which meant the jury could give him the death penalty. That evening, Judy and Dennis Shepherd were approached by McKinney's defense team, who pled for their client's life. The prosecution indicated that they would defer to the family's wishes as to whether or not to pursue the death penalty. The following morning, Dennis Shepherd made a statement to the court. Here is some of what he said.
My son Matthew did not look like a winner. He was rather uncoordinated and wore braces from the age of 13 until the day he died. However, in his all too brief life, he proved that he was a winner. On October 6th, 1998, my son tried to show the world that he could win again. On October 12th, 1998, my firstborn son and my hero lost. On October 12th, 1998, my firstborn son and my hero died. 50 days before his 22nd birthday. I keep wondering the same thing that I did when I first saw him in the hospital. What would he have become? How could he have changed his piece of the world to make it better? Matt officially died in a hospital in Fort Collins, Colorado. He actually died on the outskirts of Laramie, tied to a fence. You, Mr. McKinney, with your friend Mr. Henderson, left him there by himself. But he was not alone. There were his lifelong friends with him. Friends that he had grown up with. You're probably wondering who these friends were. First, he had the beautiful night sky and the same stars and moon we used to see through a telescope. Then he had the daylight and the sun to shine on him. And through it all, he was breathing in the scent of the pine trees from the snowy range. He heard the wind, the ever-present Wyoming wind, for the last time. He had one more friend with him. He had God. And I feel better knowing he wasn't alone. Matt's beating, hospitalization, and funeral focused worldwide attention on hate. Good is coming out of evil. People have said enough is enough. I miss my son, but I am proud to be able to say that he was my son. Judy has been quoted as being against the death penalty. It has been stated that Matt was against the death penalty. Both of these statements are wrong. I, too, believe in the death penalty. I would like nothing better than to see you die, Mr. McKinney. However, this is the time to begin the healing process. To show mercy to someone who refused to show any mercy. Mr. McKinney, I am going to grant you life. As hard as it is to do so, because of Matthew. Every time you celebrate Christmas, a birthday, the 4th of July, remember that Matt isn't. Every time you wake up in your prison cell, remember you had the opportunity and the ability to stop your actions that night. You robbed me of something very precious, and I will never forgive you for that. Mr. McKinney, I give you life in the memory of someone who no longer lives. May you have a long life, and may you thank Matthew every day for it.
Me and Debray hugged and cried, and everyone had tears in their eyes. You're just so thankful, And Mr. Shepard started crying, and that got me bawling, and everybody just...
This is all we lived and breathed for a year. Daily. This was my case. Daily. And now it's all over.
Maybe now we can go on and we can quit being stuck,
It just hit me today, the minute I got out of the courthouse, that the reason that God wanted me to find him there was for that he didn't have to die out there alone, Like, if I wouldn't have came along, they wouldn't have found him for a couple weeks, at least. And, it just makes me feel really good that he didn't have to die out there alone.
I'm just glad it's over. No, I really am. Testifying in that trial was the hardest thing I had to do in my life.
On our last trip, I had the good fortune of seeing Jedediah Schultz play the role of Pryor in Angels in America.
I didn't for the longest time let myself get involved in the Matthew Shepard thing. It didn't seem real. It just seemed way blown out of proportion. Matthew Shepard was a name instead of an individual. I don't know, man. It's just weird. I feel bad. I feel bad for the person that I used to be. How could I ever let myself say that stuff about homosexuals? How could I ever let that stuff make me think that you were different from me?
Well, a year ago, I wanted to be a rock star. That was my goal. And now, it's obviously changed in the fact that, over the past year, I've really realized my role in taking my part. So instead of going to school to be in music, I am going to school for communications and political science because I have a career in political activism. Actually, I just recently found out that I'm going to be honored in Washington, D.C. by the Anti-Defamation League. And whenever I think about the angels or any of the speaking that I've done. You know, Matthew gave me. It's like he's guiding this little path with his light, and every time we get to a door, he just says, okay, next step. If I get to be a rock star on the side, okay.
You know, it's been a year since Matthew Shepard died, and they haven't passed shit in Wyoming. At a state level, any town, nobody anywhere has passed any kind of laws, anti-discrimination laws, hate crime legislation. Nobody anywhere has passed anything. What's come out of it? What's come out of this that's concrete or lasting?
I've been up to that site in my limousine, and I remember to myself the night he and I drove around together. He said to me, Laramie sparkles, doesn't it? And where he was up there, if you sit exactly where he was up there, Laramie sparkles from there. With a low-lying cloud, it's the blue lights bouncing off the clouds from the airport. And it just goes across the whole city. It blows you away. And Matt was right in that spot. And I could just picture it in his eyes. I could just picture what he was seeing. The last thing he saw on this earth was the sparkling lights.
We spent the last 2 days packing a year's worth of materials and saying our goodbyes. We've been here 6 times and conducted over 200 interviews. Jedediah cried when he said goodbye.
Marge wished us luck. And when we asked her how Laramie would feel seeing a play about itself, she said,
I think we'd enjoy it. To show it's not the hellhole of the earth would be nice. But that is up to how you portray us. And in turn up to how Laramie behaves.
As we were getting off the phone, she said to me,
Now take care, honey. I love you.
Doc asked me if I wanted to ghostwrite a book about the whole event. Galloway offered me, or anyone else, a place to stay if and when we come back to Laramie.
We left Laramie at about 7 in the evening. On the way to Denver, I looked in my rearview mirror to take one last look at the town. And in the distance, I could see the sparkling lights of Laramie, Wyoming.